Hey loves, it's Britt, and in this video I'm talking about natal Saturn quincunx Pluto, or natal Saturn in conjunct to Pluto. So I said this in my last video where I was talking about the quincunx aspect, that the quincunx or the in conjunct aspect is kind of like a nail biting aspect. It's like the energy of a constant state of like unease or anxiety, but it's not quite as overt as the square. So it can be more like under the surface, but then because we don't really know what's going on, we can't quite put our finger on it, it can actually end up causing more difficulties. And, a common manifestation of an in conjunct or quincunx aspect that is unresolved is like emotional difficulties, but also it can show up as health difficulties as well. So the quincunx aspect has a sixth house or an eighth house connotation because when we're doing the natural chart, the Aries ascendant is quincunx to the Virgo or the Scorpio, and the sixth house or the eighth house. So there's an element of researching, like with the eighth house aspect of the quincunx, and then there's an element of working through things and mental kind of thought forms, anxiety, like the sixth house aspect. So with this quincunx of Saturn to Pluto, it produces a lot of feelings of insecurity, and the insecurity is rooted in like the foundation of our life. Like Saturn is like the root chakra. Saturn is like the structure, the walls, and people with Saturn quincunx to Pluto can feel like at a very foundational level they lack groundedness. They feel, they can feel very much like they're floating through life. It can be hard to really experience a sense of like their place in the world, but also a sense of like structure and groundedness. And like this quincunx too can manifest as difficulties with authorities, difficulties with rules, because when we try to achieve some sort of structure or some sort of like guide to life, like as Saturn wants us to do, like Saturn is about rules and regulations and restrictions and like Capricornian things. When we try to achieve that, Pluto comes in here with that awkward energy of the quincunx and is like, not this way, not yet, not now, or there's more to learn, there's more to research here. So, what can end up happening on the positive with this quincunx is that there's a great like distrust of anything Saturnian in some cases. So it can actually be the opposite as well. It depends on which side of this they're coming out of, but it can really be that there's a distrust of anything, like any rules, any authority. So then this person ends up like kind of making their own rules and being quite intuitive about it. They resist any form of like, this is the way that it is, this is the way it's always been, and this is the way. And so they can definitely come to their own ideas about things. You might see them as people who are kind of like rebels, they're not following the status quo because Pluto is always telling them to look deeper and dig deeper, and there's more there, there's more under the surface. And the quincunx aspect in itself, like I said, because of the eighth house connotation, is like the researcher, right? But then with Pluto also being involved, it's kind of like a double eighth house connotation. So these people like don't take anything that is said at face value. They always look deeper. And what that can lead to is actually paranoia and things that are not actually there. Sometimes they look too deep into things, right? But it also can lead to like a profound wisdom, and they will struggle with a sense of timing with this quincunx, like being in the right place at the right time, like especially at the beginning of their life before they've kind of made this conscious. It's like they're never at the right place at the right time. They're not the kind of person, unless we have other trines to Pluto going on, they're not the kind of person that is like having a good sense of timing. They're either like completely forcing the issue, and sometimes it can be to do with like their professional success as well, like their career and their like 10th house matters, right? Because Saturn kind of has that natural rulership. But so sometimes they're like pushing the issue too much, they're too aggressive, they're like just overworking themselves, and then other times they're actually a bit lazy and they're not applying themselves much at all. They're not having the right amount of structure or like ability to follow through. So it's very interesting to observe these people and their patterns, because it's like there's actually something very unique about the way that these people maneuver through life, the way that they see the world, and the way that they react to things is is definitely very unique. But yeah, it's like their sense of timing, at least for the first part of life, is very very off, and they do feel like they're never in the right place at the right time, or they don't know how to like properly use their energies to get success. So it's kind of like a feeling of like, the hamster on the wheel, like they're never getting anywhere, and they can really feel, especially professionally, like they're just never getting to be where they want to be. And there's always like a crisis with Saturn, Quincunx, Pluto. Now, they can actually work in like jobs that there are always crises, and that can be like an actual aspect of this, is that they work in like a crisis situation, but whether or not they actually work in that situation, they do constantly find themselves in some sort of crisis, because we have Saturn, the structure, Quincunx making this awkward aspect to Pluto, which is death and rebirth, transformation, and basically like annihilation of like all the old patterns. And like, so having this aspect with Saturn and Pluto, it's like they're constantly, either they feel like they're in a crisis or they actually are in a crisis, and they can end up really actually having a gift for those types of situations that other people just don't have experience in, because they end up having experience in those kind of situations. And sometimes it is their own doing, like their own inadequate or improper use of their own energy, that then leads them to some sort of crisis, right? But often it is just that they happen to be this person who is around a lot of shit like that, and it's just, yeah, it ends up being a gift when we have this quincunx. They also can have an over focus or concern with death and dark things, like they're kind of always researching, or they really on the negative side, they could have almost like paranoias and like fears about death, and they're the kind of person that's always saying, when I die, here's what I would like to happen. They probably are the kind of person that has a will for sure, or like they've planned it, they've thought about it a lot. Okay, they in some cases could have obsessively thought about it, and like on the ultimate like negative side of this aspect, we could see like extreme paranoia, fear of death, or even almost like a manic kind of energy to do with these dark themes. Obviously, in those cases, what these people really need is grounding. Like, if I could give some advice to people with this aspect right now, it would be like to go hug a tree or something, like to really ground into the earth when we have this aspect. Because yeah, there's this real like up in the air, like I said at the beginning, quality of these people where it's like, yeah, what they really could use is some grounding. A massage would be especially good, or like a massage that actually like gets into the bones, like gets deep, even like a reflexology type of massage, like that, like a deep tissue grounding like energy. Because that's the thing, and this is actually with all Saturn Pluto aspects, but I feel like the quincunx, and because of the unconscious aspect of the quincunx, it's like even more so, these people really just need to let go. This is kind of like a tightly wound aspect. Like I think I might have said this about Saturn square Pluto. Like this is like a tight ass. Like loosen the muscles of your anus. Like this is a very kind of struggling to relax, struggling to ground, like the tailbone, the root, like they're very tight, right? Like they need relaxation, they need simplicity, they need to come back down to earth. And when they do have some sort of grounding or some sort of like feeling of the rootedness of where they are in the world, then that's when the gifts of this can really come out, which is the way that they see things. Like I said, it's very unique. It's not simple in any way. It's like they see things that others don't. They can end up being very intuitive. They can end up being very comfortable with, like I've said, the darker aspects of life, death. You could even see them. I think one of my books says that they can work in things like insurance or taxes or inheritances and things like that. And it's funny because I actually know multiple people with this aspect who either work in insurance or financial institutions type of thing. So there's an element of that as well. But yeah, there's something very tightly wound about these people, like I was saying. So just anything to kind of loosen up and bringing in, I think the ultimate meaning of this is like bringing in safety, like bringing in an element of safety. Like something has happened, or maybe this is even something they're carrying over for their lineage, for their, like this is coming through the ancestral line. This is like they're like the cycle breaker of this like feeling of anxiety and unease and ungroundedness, because maybe in previous timelines or previous lifetimes we couldn't fully ground into this world, to this land, because a war could happen, or like chaos, cataclysm. Like they're so like in their DNA aware of these crises that can just totally destroy the world and destroy life as we know it. And it's like that's almost like in their DNA, and they need to like realize that probably in this lifetime there's not going to be some huge natural disaster, or I mean maybe there is, and maybe they're going to be there and they're going to be the ones supporting people through it, but like taking out the fear of that and bringing in a feeling of safety and connectedness and groundedness into the earth and into this lifetime. Like they're meant to be in this lifetime, they're perfect as they are to be in this lifetime. And because like they can also end up having shame about the way that they feel, because they know that they have this different way of perceiving things. They know that they have this anxiety that never really goes away, and they can feel out of place because of it, but they need to know that they're perfect as they are. This aspect and all its challenges has come with the specific lessons that they've needed to learn. And yeah, just really grounding into their place, their giftedness, and also feelings of security. Financially, they're usually very good with money, actually, because it is such a insecurity or feeling of lack. That's another thing about Saturn, Pluto, and specifically this aspect, is that they really are coming from a place of lack and fear. It's all root chakra stuff. If you read about the root chakra and the chakra systems, like they're very much like in this feeling of like there's never enough. So they're great at like saving money, they're great at like keeping it for a rainy day, but they might have a hard time releasing it and trusting that more gets to come. And it's another one of these lessons of like trusting in the earth and trusting in like abundance and like being worthy of good. Like their life doesn't have to be constantly challenged and challenging all the time. It's just that's all they know in their pattern. So something even like hypnosis too, hypnosis for relaxation, hypnosis for like changing their expectations to have good things happen or miracles happen or things like that, because that's going to be in some cases kind of like the opposite of what they've experienced in their life or what they do experience. And it's kind of like a pattern that needs to be broken, right? When we have this quincunx in the natal chart, and you want to look at the signs and you want to look at the houses that this quincunx is taking place in and see like the issue or any other aspects that are connecting to this aspect, because this aspect has this effect of like crystallization. Like it makes everything really stuck and stagnant. Like I said, it's like tightly wound when we have this aspect. So, yeah, I'd love to know your experience of this aspect. If you have it in your natal chart, I'd love to know how it has been for you. And yeah, let me know, you guys. Keep your requests coming. Sending you all the love if you have this aspect. I know it's probably been tough for you. Love you guys. Thank you for watching. Okay, bye.